I was going to speak about the US bases in the UK and their role and what's happening here. But also, we mustn't forget that the UK has its own military bases around the world, and they've been used by the RAF and others for bombings in Syria and elsewhere. And I'm thinking in particular of Cyprus, where they were taking off from there to bomb Syria. And also, the thing about the bases that both the Americans have in the UK and the UK has in other countries is they're kind of two different types. One is the type of like an airfield where you can take off, bombers can take off from and either participate in exercises or actually go out and do the real thing of bombing and killing people. The other type of base is not recognized so much as a base, but they're extremely important, and that's intelligence gathering and satellite monitoring bases. And those are particularly key in the UK. And I want really to talk probably mainly about them, but just to talk about the airfields first. In Britain, we have two particular airfields which are used by the US. And these bases and airfields in the UK are always labelled RAF, Royal Air Force, but they're not actually Royal Air Force controlled. It's mainly United States, USAF. They're joint facilities, but the major operations are by the Americans. So in the UK, we have Fairford, and just recently, in the last few weeks, really, it's been noticed a number of B-52 bombers have been taking off from there, and I think they've been participating in various exercises. And I think there was an exercise just recently where a series, I'm not exactly sure how many, but 4 or 5 of them took off from Fairford, and they went around all the European countries in NATO as a kind of, I don't know why, but that's what they do, these kind of military people. They do things that don't make any sense. Well, it probably does make some sort of sense, but to me. So it was a demonstration of bringing the countries of NATO together, I think, in the air. And so some of those took off from RF Fairford, with USAF Fairford. The other place is Lakenheath, which also has airfield, which is being used by the Americans. And Lakenheath in the past was used by the US to host, or for UK to host American nuclear weapons. As far as we know, there are none there now. Those have been removed some time ago, but who knows if they may come back, because there is this kind of relationship between the current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who's really just a small Donald Trump. He behaves in very similar ways, and the very close connection between those two figures, Donald Trump and Boris Johnson, which is particularly worrying for us, if not for the rest of the world. So those two particular air bases are of major importance, I think, Lakenheath and Fairford. Also, Fairford has a particularly long runway. So in fact, the B-2 stealth bombers have been seen to land there as well and take off from there. So, you know, we have noticed recently, or it has been noticed by activists in the region, there's an increased amount of activity around Fairford with the B-52s coming and going, which it's not unusual to see them, but it's unusual to see them in so many numbers. So who knows what's being built up there. The other bases I wanted to mention were the ones that are gathering intelligence and analyzing that intelligence through satellite systems, through drones, etc. A major one at the moment, which is in the news, is Croughton, which is near Oxford in the sort of Midlands in Britain. This is hitting the news headlines because of an accident that occurred outside the base. A young teenager, Harry Dunn, was killed by a car coming out of the base, driving on the wrong side of the road in this country, the right side of the road in America, I suppose. But he was killed by an accident. The car was being driven by a woman, Anne Sakulas, who was the wife of an operative in the base. Now, what happened then was that she was whisked back to the United States very quickly. And it was claimed that she had diplomatic immunity. Well, this has been shown to be rubbish in the newspapers because, for a start, she wasn't even working on the base. It was her husband who was working on the base. He was not a diplomat. He was an intelligence officer. So really, there was no way in which you could claim diplomatic immunity for that kind of for her. So anyway, she has been charged with causing death by dangerous driving, but in her absence, of course, she's now in the United States. The UK has tried to ask for an extradition order from the US to bring her back to face trial, and her family of Harry Dunn has been campaigning really strongly about this, really trying to get some justice for their son. But the US has refused that extradition. It does mean that this base, the operations that are going on in the base, and the fact that US kind of operatives that work in these bases are above our law, basically, in the UK. They can, and I think it's been mentioned elsewhere, that all sorts of things have happened with operatives or military personnel in bases abroad that don't go through the justice system. Instead, they're just hidden away and the people are removed as quickly as possible. And this is starting to make people realize about what the UK and US so-called special relationship really is. And that is that we do exactly as we're told by the US. So Crowton, an intelligence gathering and analysis center, and also a communication center for NATO and for the United States forces around Europe. It's of particular importance also for drone warfare. It has a direct fiber optic cable link to Djibouti, to the Camp Lemonard US base there. And also they don't fly drones from Crowton, but the information that's provided to drones goes via Crowton. And also Ramstein, of course, they're all connected in a similar kind of network. And the information that also leads to the targeting of drones is gathered through a whole intelligence gathering system around the world. But a lot of it some of it anyway, is based in the UK. So for example, Crowton is that intelligence kind of analysis goes on, but also the information is gained through places like Menwith Hill in the north of Britain, which is the largest spy station, US spy station outside of the United States. We've come through today, we've heard about the largest, all sorts of bases around that the US has around the world. And the largest intelligence base, as far as we know, is in Menwith Hill. This has a number of different satellite receiving dishes, which receive information from NSA satellites, but also from other satellites, which it intercepts communication systems. Another way of getting information through electronic means is from fiber optic cables. Back in the 70s, there was this revolution of communication through satellite systems. And that's kind of given way to some extent, although it's still there, but to fiber optic communications. And these huge fiber optic cables, which are laid under the sea, cover the Earth's cover the Earth's surface, the ocean surface, I suppose, too. And they have to come to the surface at different points in order to perform the work. And various places they're plugged into by the NSA, GCHQ, which is the British equivalent of the NSA. And in particular, there's a place in Cornwall where that happens, Morwenstow, in Bude, sort of a holiday resort really in the Cornish, on the Cornish coast. Fibre optic cables come to land there and they're intercepted basically, and that's another form of gathering the intelligence that coming through telecommunication systems. I think also Croughton was involved in relaying information from the network that the US has of spy systems in various bases, embassies, sorry, around the world. And it was involved in relaying the information to, when the NSA was intercepting Angela Merkel's mobile phone, if you remember, that also hit the headlines a little while ago now. But it's that kind of, it's part of that kind of system, a global system of spying, of hacking, and of gathering information that can be used by the military, further used by the military. Menwith Hill has been connected with various drone information activities as well. It tries to, well, it looks for individuals and groups that it targets and monitors their communication systems for information. Another similar kind of thing is happening at another RAF base, which is not so well known, called Digby. They have a system where they can operate through drones, through Predator drones, a system called Air Handler, where basically the drone can fly over a particular area and pick up lots of telecommunications, mobile phones, etc., and then relay them back for analysis later on. Also, just to mention that I think last time we had a meeting of this group, I reported that 3 bases were due to be closed, 3 US bases were due to close in the UK. Well, in fact, that's been totally reversed. Instead of closing, those bases are being enlarged. And in particular, I wanted to mention Molesworth, which is, some of you may remember Molesworth as being an important cruise missile base back in the 70s and 80s. And now it's in another one of these intelligence gathering centers. So the Joint Analysis Center at Molesworth will be developed even further than it is at the moment. And it will join with AFRICOM intelligence gathering to form what's going to be the Joint Intelligence Analysis Center, along with NATO's Intelligence Fusion Center. So this is by intelligence fusion, what it's meant is all of the data that's gathered through these various intelligence gathering roles is gathered together, and then various kind of algorithms and computer systems are used to try and get as much information that's important for the military as possible. So these are the bases that we need really to highlight more of, because they're not the bases where tanks are coming in out of. They're not bases where hundreds and thousands of soldiers are moving in and out of. They're ordinary looking people who are the operatives in these bases. They come in and out of the bases in cars. Sometimes the cars are American cars, left-hand drives, but sometimes they're not. And we need really to emphasize the incredibly important role that these bases play in military intelligence gathering, and therefore in planning and operations. And it's not just the UK, they're all over the world, but the UK is a particular focus that we're interested in. Some of the ways in which we're doing that are general demonstrations, protests, articles, etc., but also coming up I'm also a member of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. And coming up from the 3rd till the 10th of October is Keep Space for Peace Week. It's been designated as Space Week by the United Nations, and the Global Network designates it as Keep Space for Peace Week, where people can protest and demonstrate against the militarization of space. And during this week, there are a number of different webinars and information giving series of internet presences, which you can see the list of on the CND website. Actually, I haven't got a list here, but there are several going on, and there are more being added all the time. I think last year there was something like 40 actions at through 10 different countries around the world. We can't really perform the actions that we did last year, but we can at least relate the information about what those bases are doing over the internet, thereby maybe even getting bigger audiences than we would have done otherwise. So I hope that you can join us in one or more of those webinars and spread this information around. It's so important that more people get to know about what is happening in these various places around the world. So I think that's it for me. From the unsinkable aircraft carrier that UK. Thank you very much, and good luck to everybody in the fight for peace and real security. Thank you.